Good afternoon. My name is Mitch Robertson. I'm the Director of Enterprise Systems for Curo Financial. And this is another video short that's in my series, Why Wired Data, trying to show and explain why wired data is important to me. And so I wanted to kind of start this off with a little bit of a bang because I think it was amazing to me when I first got a tool like ExtraHop in my environment and could actually see this kind of thing happening. I'd always had theories about it. I had always believed some of this stuff was happening, but to be able to see it was absolutely amazing. So I'm going to quickly get started. I'm ready to get into the meat. This is a top DNS query by query over a 30-minute period in an environment. Xerox Discovery Supernode 3. That's DNS errors by query. This was name not found, basically. Look at that. Look at the numbers. That's 900,000 queries in 30 minutes. Is that too much DNS? This actually happened after an update to some of our Xerox printers. They started querying for the Supernode, and it increased our DNS. Pretty interesting to see what happens when customers and clients, vendors, set up things and don't really explain or work with the right teams to make sure it's set up correctly. This came on by default and it started making these queries. And what happens when an application makes a query and does not get a response or gets a response it doesn't expect, like name not found, oftentimes it will request it again and again and again and again and again and again. And so you have this continual retry that starts to take place that can be kind of crazy in your environment. Think about if your domain controllers have your DNS servers on them, and is it possible for us to overwhelm those domain controllers? Do you ever see events that says something like the domain share is not available, or the net or one of your domain controllers doesn't authenticate well, or you have authentication problems that come and go, or maybe you have GPO processing problems where they come and go? You ever thought it could be because DNS? Something to think about. I'm not saying this is what causes it, but this is something to think about it. Do you think it's a good idea to have an extra 900,000 queries of DNS on your environment? What about this kind of spike in DNS requests? If you notice, I've got requests and response in here, and you see that at right about 1440, actually 1425 to 1426, you can see that we start getting to the point that requests and responses are a little different. So we have a lot of requests happening, we have some responses, more responses happen, which is a little unusual. But this is a pretty big spike. You can see we normally travel along at about 10,000 DNS requests, and then all of a sudden we have this great big spike up to 60,000 DNS requests. Could that be a problem? Did it last for a while? That's a little bit of a concern. This is during your busiest time of day. Are your domain controllers or your DNS servers going to be able to handle that load? Does this affect other more production queries? If your DNS servers stop responding or they slow their response down, does that become a problem? I don't know. These are good questions to ask. Can you even see this in your environment? This is the kind of information that you start to get when you deploy a tool that can analyze in real time the layer 7 protocol information. And again, I'm going to continue to talk about this and talk about different layer 7 protocols. I'll probably spend a couple of weeks in DNS just because I think there's a lot to it. And then we'll move on to TCP, three-way handshakes, some of the other things. But right here, that's a concern. If you see this kind of thing during the day, even at night, it might be of a concern, might be something to think about. In this case, we actually had 4 million requests and response from a single client during that 1 hour period. A single client. That's interesting. What if multiples had done this? This is not a good thing. This is something you generally would want to chase down and fix. But if you don't have the visibility to see it, you'll never know what happened. And you might have some strange issues like connection errors, timeout errors from applications that you didn't or couldn't find the root cause of. It's this kind of thing that happens on networks all the time that people don't have the visibility into and often miss when they have problems. And it's funny, they attribute it quite often to Microsoft applications. Oh, server just needed a reboot. Did it really? Don't know. Something to think about. Pretty cool stuff when you see this kind of thing. 4 million requests? Actually 4 million requests and responses, so it's probably closer to 2 million requests and 2 million responses. That's still an awful lot in some environments. Maybe not everybody's. Maybe theirs would be more obvious if it was 20 million, 40 million, but would it be possible? Absolutely. I've seen clients take off and do millions and millions of requests in a very short period of time. So something to pay attention to. Pretty cool. How about this? Have you ever seen this kind of thing? I think most of us have. I think most of us know what it is. This right here is a response with multiple answers. It's for Cisco's cloud AMP solution, so their AMP client checking in with the cloud. And the problem of it is the time to live is 0. So think about this. If I have 4,000 clients that are supposed to check in starting at midnight, between midnight and 1 or midnight and 2, that means automatically I'm going to have 4,000 requests that are going to happen on my environment right then and there for no reason. I mean, boom, they're just going to do 4,000 requests. If you think about the rest of your environment, oftentimes you're querying your DNS servers that then have to query something externally. And since this time to live is set to 0, this isn't cached on your DNS servers anymore. It just went right through. So your server is going to have to make 4,000 requests out to the server that it's forwarding to, or it's going to have to go through the entire iterative process to get to from the root domain all the way down to cisco.com or amp.cisco.com. Is this a good idea? I don't know. It's very effective. Is Cisco the only one doing this? No, McAfee does it. Several others do it. But it's amazing to me that they're using this 0 time to live, because this causes a significant increase in DNS requests in a company's environment. Now, cool thing is that I've got both response and requests up there, so you're not seeing the responses because they're hidden by the requests. That means pretty much the server's handling the load. It's responding to every event without a problem. But not all environments are that way. Could this be enough to tip over your environment? Could it tip over your environment? Is it tipping over your environment? I don't know. What if we went to 10,000 clients? 20,000 requests? What happens when DNS has a little bit of a difficult time and it starts requesting it even more? Because obviously it can't get through, it's going to request more. So, what if you're troubleshooting a problem with AMP? How are you going to tell which server it connected to? You have no idea because it's any one of the 5, and you can do a request or a test on that PC or server that you're on, and you probably are going to end up going to a different server than what the original connection went to. So really kind of difficult to manage. It would be great if they took advantage of caching, even if it's 5 minutes, but since they set the time to live to 0, often that carries all the way through and it just continues and it stays cached or stays out of cache, and the client just has to request and request and request and request and request. So something to think about. Is this a problem for your environment? I don't know. Something definitely you might want to think about.